it live. Okay. Well, do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike your match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
Welcome to the really big Barbecue Central show. This is the show where we talk about all things that are important in the world of barbecue and grilling. This show originating from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. I am your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on a Wednesday for the new content, but not a live show, last night content situation since I'm out of town this week. Wanted to have some new stuff to give you, but opted to not try and rerun a best of or anything like that on a Tuesday and then regurgitate that back on Wednesday and Thursday. If you want to get a hold of the show or follow the show during off-show hours, here's how you do all that.
You can get in touch with the show by sending an email to greg@bbqcentralshow.com. Follow us on all the social media channels at BBQ Central Show. And be sure to subscribe to the show podcast feed on your favorite podcast platform.
Anything else you want to find out about the show can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening in the first hour. Long awaited, few times tried, not very successful those first few times, but this time out, a raging success. In fact, this whole first hour is going to be an interview with John Tesar, Chef John Tesar, Michelin star winner John Tesar. The list goes on. And within the minutes of the conversation that will follow, I think you'll quickly become a fan of John Tesar, even more than if you have already known him in some form or fashion. Maybe you've seen him on some television shows. He's taken place in television competitions, things like this. So it was a great interview in my estimation. Learned a lot about the restaurant industry, learned a lot about meat, learned a lot about what it's like to be involved in restaurants at a very high level. So hopefully you'll enjoy the segment that you hear coming up behind me with John Tesar, and we won't waste any more time because it's roughly over an hour of content. So before we get to John, let's talk about one of the coolest things to happen in the live fire world recently. What's that? The Members Mark Pro Series Grill. Yes. Imagine this, friends, if you could possibly. A thermostatic gas grill, thoughtfully designed, engineered with materials specifically selected for their durability and performance. What does that mean? It means the firebox was designed to deliver the ultimate in heat retention, durability, and premium corrosion resistance. Every detail of the cooking system has been fine-tuned to ensure superior and consistent cooking performances, including heavy-gauge cooking grates. Where do we cheap out? You might recall from the interview I had last week with James Howe over at Winners Products. That's the company that actually makes this grill. There's a lot of places that a company or a brand can decide to cheap out on when it comes to making a grill for price point. When it came to the Sam's Club grill, they got together and decided it would be a better idea maybe to come in at a little bit higher of a price point per se, but really jam it full of value. One of those instances is the cooking grates. When you look at the Pro Series over at Sam's Club, you see the heavy-duty stainless steel bar cooking grates that you get on a lot of the upper-tier cookers, let's say it like that. Plus infrared side burner, plus the technology that nobody else currently has on the market today, other than the Sam's Club grill, which is the oven mode. So, in simple terms, you have two different options. You can use the old school knobs, use it just like a grill, like you have all your life. If you want to dial in a specific temperature anywhere between 225 up to 450, those first 25 degree increments from 225 to 250, and then it adjusts 50 degree increments from there up to 450. You can dial in that temperature. All you want, it stays right there. As long as you have propane, you're good. Then, when you're done with that, if you want to switch it over into grill mode, just kick that smaller knob up and away the burners go, just where you set them before you knocked it into oven mode. You got to check it out for yourself. Fully stainless. Again, the infrared side burner, which is tremendous, all at a $699 price point. If this had a different brand tag on it, you're probably looking at $1,500 at a minimum. A lot of quality here. Members Mark Pro Series with the thermostatic control now available at your local Sam's Club store. Go find it, touch it, feel it, realize the quality, and then put it in your backyard. You're going to love it. Also available in a 4-burner option as well. Stay tuned for John Tesar right after this. Stick around, we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
We have bonus segment coverage. That's right. Joining me in this bonus segment is someone who I've been efforting since back in early 2001 when I ate at his restaurant in Dallas back then. It instantly rose to my favorite steak restaurant experience I have ever had in my life, and I've been trying to find a reason to get back to Dallas ever since. He's been on TV shows and won some, written book, won Michelin stars, won James Beard Awards. You might know about his proclivity for dry aging beef. I am excited to welcome John Tesar to the show. John, we tried to do this in mid-March. We ran into some snags, so I'm glad we're able to reconnect in order to do this. In fact, the night you were supposed to come on the show, you were literally opening a new restaurant, Knife Italian. So we're close to a month into it at this point. What's the handful of first weeks like for Knife Italian's life?
I don't think anybody, unless you've been in the restaurant business your whole life, opening a new restaurant comes with its own specific set of adventure, skills, and adaptation. You're with a new bunch of people. You're the exclusive luxury brand, Ritz-Carlton, and you're partnering your brand with them. And frankly, they raised my game. Like in Orlando at the Michelin star restaurant, they took Knife, which you loved in Dallas, and the other restaurant that I had there, Spoon, because they asked me to add seafood for Florida, and they've elevated it, to a Michelin star restaurant. So what I do in Dallas is still the same thing that we do. It's all, like you said, it's what I do, and it's what what's right for Texas, I believe.
So does the Ritz-Carlton get a hold of you and say, John, we love what you're all about. We know what you're doing in Dallas and we want to figure out something? Or do you pitch to them? How does that relationship happen?
It's ownership. So a fund or a group of guys that run a fund buy a property. They do this around the country. Most resorts, used to be owned by hotels, or, people don't understand that there's an owner, there's a management company, and then there's, all the other parts, like a watch. So a fund or even an individual investor will spend, hundreds of millions of dollars to purchase a resort. They will politic or cajole a brand like Ritz-Carlton to manage their property, which comes with, some cachet. And then they go out and look for some culinary talent because they don't want just a regular hotel restaurant. They want someone that's going to keep people on property, keep somebody interested. And, the resorts that I'm at have golf at them. So, what better combination than golfers and great steakhouses? So it's a good partnership, and it has been for a while now.
Can you take me through the weeks, 3, 4, 5 weeks leading into an opening of a restaurant? We can take Knife Italian, obviously, because it's just happened. What's that like? Sure.
Oh, it's a lot of meetings, a lot of phone calls, a lot of conversations, a lot of compromise, a lot of being present. When they rely on you for the menu And for the brand, you have to bring it. So I was aging meat for 7 months prior to opening the restaurant. I'm developing recipes, and as Bourdain used to say, I'm dyslexic. I never write anything down. So I'm not the classic recipe writer, clerical human being. So I go through this process where I cook everything on video or in front of people, and then we try to duplicate it from there rather than just reading a recipe off a page, which I don't solve for most people.
I remember hearing Howard Stern ask this question to musicians all the time. And it's, do you keep a pad of paper? Do you have a voice recorder? You just say you don't write anything down. Do you have any idea how many great recipes might have escaped you over time? Or do you think you've recaptured all of them?
Oh, no, they definitely, they come and go. It's like, because I make brain space, and then someone reminds me. I've literally had people go like, do you still make that dish that you made at the mansion on Turtle Creek? And I'm looking back, I'm like, that's 2006. And I have to go through my little categories in my brain, because when you're dyslexic, you develop these other skills. Like I see things in pictures. Like when someone tells me a story about something, I'm seeing it visually, because I can't see it in the written word. It's hard to describe. I'm numerically dyslexic and kind of concentrationally, alphabetically dyslexic, where if I read, I don't retain what I'm reading. But if you tell me something, or I see, like I've never forgotten a face in my entire life. Like I've met you now, I'll know. I might not remember your name 5 years from now, but I'll know that you're Greg from the barbecue show. Just don't know what your name is, So it's something I was born with, and really has helped me get through this, learning disability. Because when I was in college, I went to school in New York City, and literally in freshman year, the English teacher at New York University called my parents and said, is there something wrong with this kid? Like I couldn't, I was writing words backwards and upside down and like all this illiterate stuff. And back then they had no real knowledge of what dyslexia was. You were punished for it. So, but I think there's a lot of famous people who have overcome that, because it's like, when you're blind, like another sense accentuates. I think that's part of the human condition. Like wherever you're deprivational in one area, you may be stronger in another area.
So when you're growing up, and you're not diagnosed until it sounds like college, when a professor sees how you're writing, are you a bad student? And obviously not by choice. Are you constantly stressed out? Like, what's life like living with that and nobody's able to help?
Well, ignorance is, and up until junior high school, I think it's a pretty much of a free ride educationally, especially back in the 70s and the 80s. There wasn't all the pressure that they put on children today to succeed in test scores. It was like, the survival of the fittest. And if you were a Regent student, you went on to those classes, and you had, your parents had an agenda for you. And my mother was an educator. She worked in the school system, and so she was very connected to what I was doing. I was a B student. I've had great instincts. I'm a New Yorker. I'm street smart. I can remember like history and stuff like that. I was a great athlete, an average athlete, but great at everything, kind of good at everything kind of guy in high school. When it got to the mathematics and the English is where I really suffered, because numerically dyslexic, it was very challenging for me to, like, when they started getting rid of real numbers and putting like A and B and C and algebra and stuff like that. It's a great story. My algebra teacher was a great hockey fan. And I still am a New York Ranger fan all these years of my life. And my parents had season tickets to the Rangers and the Knicks. So my mother in ninth grade, when I was getting a 65 in algebra, she went to my algebra teacher and said, would you tutor my son at the hockey games on Sunday night? So we'd go to the Ranger games. He'd bring the Regency workbook, and I'd study algebra, and I wound up getting 98 on the Regents. So it's like dyslexic people just need to be explained things. Like I've been to IKEA, and I put things together backwards. I take them apart, and then I put them together the right way. And that's the truth. It's like I've done that a couple of times in my life.
You've referenced New York a couple of different times. So originally from New York State, because I think I'm a New York State born and bred until like 6th or 7th grade, and we moved here to Cleveland. But a lot of people just associate New York with the city, and they don't realize the massive state that surrounds it.
No, I had I had three, but I did a lot of, I learned how to ski at Hunter Mountain, and, went up there during the winter a lot. But I grew up in Manhattan. My grandmother had a house in Queens, and my parents had a house in the Hamptons. So I had the best of three worlds. And this was like, Queens and Manhattan back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was quite an experience. I mean, different world than it is today, and the land of opportunity, and, what's great stories written about.
60s, 70s, and 80s, Manhattan for sure, and Brooklyn mob run, notoriously mob run. You run into any of that or
man.
know any wise guys?
Oh, in the restaurant business? Heck yeah. I used to hang out at this restaurant at 75th and First Avenue. This was like in my early 20s. So we're talking, like the 80s, early mid 80s, right when Gotti was holding court after Paulie got whacked at Sparks.
Yep.
I would go to Campagnola and Giuliani and Bratton, who was the police commissioner at that time, and Giuliani was not the mayor yet, he was the U.S. attorney. They would sit at Campagnola at the piano bar, and Sammy the Bull and Gotti would be at the bar, and Liz Taylor would be at the next table.
Wow.
That was the Upper East Side of New York back then. It was just a mishmash of, like, you see it in stories, like, I had a restaurant in West Hampton from 82 to 89 that I owned at 24 years old.
Wow.
And it was so popular that I could go into New York City and I could walk into places like Studio 54 with a t-shirt and pants. Rubel would let me in, and, I'd hang out with like Vitas Gerulaitis and John McEnroe, like doing all kinds of weird stuff. And then you'd see Andy Warhol and all those things. It's hard to explain that I've had this life of 6 degrees of separation from cooking. It's brought us, I think people see the celebrity chef now and the connection, but people were always intrigued by people who could really cook, and restaurants was a real social scene. And I think a large part of the American food scene, comes out of New York City. It really does.
Are you a lifelong food guy? In other words, were you the kid that was always in the kitchen and interested in learning about cooking?
I know at 12 years old, my parents left me at home for the first time in the house in the Hamptons, and I grabbed the Fannie Farmer cookbook and I made crescent cookies. I don't know why. My mother made them at Christmas and I was hungry. And so I realized that I could make crescent cookies. And then after that, I just had a proficiency, and it was a way of survival for me. I wanted to be a skateboarder and a professional surfer. My grandfather was a gymnast and, Olympic gymnast. So we had all of those agility skills and sports that growing up in a family in New York. And then when the tricks got too complicated at 13 and 14 years old, I took all of that agility and adrenaline sport into surfing and skateboarding in Long Island in the Hamptons. And that's what I started working in a pub in West Hampton, Magic's Pub, which we have a hamburger on our menu still to this day. It's an English muffin, good cheddar cheese, an 8-ounce burger. It's like more of a Melon's burger than anything, New York City kind of thing. And I learned how to make that there. I thought it was like one of the greatest hamburgers I've ever had in my life. I fell in love with the flavors of food and steak, and I say it in my book. My dad took me to this place, Part 1, in Kew Gardens, which was a mafia restaurant. And I was, I think, 12 or 13 years old. And they cooked steak, and I went into that restaurant and I smelt that beef and that flavor that I tasted on the plate, and I never. And when I was a kid, oddly enough, all I would eat was steak, lamb chops, and French fries. Until later on in life, I more varied, more seafood. I became a chef, but it's like one of those athletes. I just wanted protein. I wanted some carbs. I ran around all day long, and I learned what a great steak tastes like. And I think that's what it is. Most of our likes as adults come from childhood memories of good stuff, of the good stuff.
What's the state of learning to cook in homes these days, in your opinion?
Oh my God. I get wrecked on sometimes because I'm too honest about my opinions about the food business.
Hey, Daniel Vaughn says that on this show, we are courageous. So let's be courageous, John.
We are. No, I'm courageous. And I will not hold back. And I respect my profession and the people I work with. But it's become a very difficult world since the pandemic. And, there's a lot of factors into that. I think people were given a lot of free money. They were showed that maybe they should get paid more. And then they sat at home, and some people worked on themselves and became out better people, and some people are still lost. And there's a level of sensitivity, which I think is great for day-to-day life, but not so great for the work environment. And until we separate those two, everyone's going to have difficulty training people, finding people with dedication like we did in the past. And I can't tell you why, because It's out there for them to grab. And I think anybody, if you're listening to this, if you're 18 to 30, this is the time to focus. Go out there and work your ass off, and you're going to be somebody, because you're going to be better than 85% of the people out there right now, if you can find that space for yourself. And it's a very competitive world. I have total empathy, but it's you gotta put your nose down, your head down, and work. I don't care who you are. That's not some old man yelling, screaming, get off my lawn. If you want to accomplish something, only you can. And you have to be educated, you have to take risks, and you have to be honest about who you are and what you're doing. And then the good shit should happen, you know?
Do you think inside of the home that there are enough families either teaching their kids how to cook, or maybe the parent isn't from a family that had originally cooked when they were coming up, and they're not taking advantage of now trying to learn and then teaching their kids the life skill as well?
Oh, yeah, I think you're opening a Pandora's box there. It's just parenting and education are everything in this world today. And that's my number one focus. I've been very blessed. As like Bourdain, we lived paycheck to paycheck for a long, long time before we figured out what to do with our lives and how to survive in this business. And then once you get a little economic freedom, your family should be your priority, because that's your legacy. And so your work ethic, and then your family, and then teaching your kids what's right and wrong, and letting them be, but also present for them, so they don't make the mistakes, so they don't wander off. And I have my oldest son won't eat pizza. He doesn't eat cheese. He doesn't want anything on his hamburger. And I know that will change once he meets a girl, but it's just adolescence. I'm into being a foodie eventually. It just happens to you.
You're a classically trained French chef. Were you always of the mindset to be an owner-operator of restaurant, or did you ever see a path where you could have just been the chef and not necessarily the owner?
That's a very good question. I very rarely thought about that. And I think I've always been destined to be an owner and a leader, for me and against me. It's a risk place to be, especially when you're very young. And the restaurant business is very, very competitive. A lot of the successful guys, despite their talent, have great money behind them. Let's face it, this is not a business where you can just go up and open a food truck anymore and support a family. I mean, you think you could do that, but you can't. You learn that's into something else, some exposure to a greater opportunity. And that's what people have to do. You have to take stepping stones in this business. So, I always wanted to be an owner. I've had such great accomplishments in my life, and my dream, like meeting Gail Green, who wrote for New York Magazine, being reviewed by that, getting a review from the New York Times, getting a Michelin star, doing Top Chef, regardless of what year it was, being interesting enough to people that they would pay attention to you, all just so they could come front. And I'm a big believer of that. No matter what you do, no matter where you go, who you are, the truth is, when you put your butt down in a seat in my restaurant, am I living up to your expectations? And if you've had a great time, then I've succeeded. Fame doesn't play into that. It's your money, it's your night out, it's your opportunity. It's my job to deliver, not entertainment, but in a total experience to you. And I think that's what's also missing from the world today too, in a larger part.
So you've hit on a topic that we've talked a lot about on the show over the 15, 16 years of the live version, 2 years before that, kind of starting in 2006, which is the word expectations. I say all the time, whenever I have a chance, live life without any expectations. The arguments that you are having in your personal life or your business life, you can boil it all the way down to there's been a missed expectation on your customer's side, or you didn't set the right expectation, or your wife this, or your husband that. It's all about missed expectation. So when you're talking about me going into Knife in Dallas for the first time, I've almost trained myself now to not have any expectation, because for years I have gone into the most elite steakhouses east of the Mississippi. I don't know if there's a lot of elite steakhouses east of the Mississippi, but that's where volleyball was taking me. So we would always search out the greatest steak restaurant. The only one that has continually met the level of expectation that I was bringing for all those years was St. Elmo in Indianapolis. And all the rest, by and large, disappointed. Should I have an expectation going into any restaurant with Michelin star or no Michelin star or Outback Steakhouse or somewhere in between? Is it wrong to have expectation as a consumer?
That's a very complicated question, but I'm on your side in the sense that I like to go in without expectations, without any preconceived notions of what's going on, and just experience the experience. And I think that's what really defines a restaurant. You know, like we all know that when food critics come into a restaurant and they're made, the whole place goes into a frenzy and they cater to the table. I've known world-class restaurateurs who have invited me to their restaurants on certain nights to sit at the next table the food critics are talking about, or what they've ordered and all that other stuff. So, you know, it's this cat and mouse game that we played for years that I think has been deconstructed for a few years now because of social media and Yelp and everybody's a critic and all this other stuff. So I think the best thing to do is rely on word of mouth. Literally rely on word of mouth, because I think food writing has been diluted, not for any purpose or any, you know, like I criticize food writers and sometimes like the James Beard Awards and stuff like that. And it's not because I'm bitter or I'm angry with them. It's because I expect more of them to define this so you can have those, they can live up to those expectations. And I find that when you know, even in therapy, they tell you not to have expectations because when you get disappointed, you use as an excuse. You know, you make excuses for things like, well, it wasn't a good night, or, you know, like baloney. If you're paying $200 for a meal, man, you better deliver. Otherwise, you're never coming back again. And if you had expectations, your heart's broken and you're disappointed. You know, you really are. I live that every day.
So that's the follow-up for me. If I go to Texas Roadhouse for a steak, I don't give a fuck. I'm going for ambiance. I'm going because my wife wanted to go there, and at most I'm spending $25, and I'm getting the 8-ounce sirloin, medium, because it's going to come out almost medium rare, trending on rare, and that's what it is. But when I go to the big boys, and I know I'm going to be going 65 plus just on the steak, nothing else, just on the steak.
Oh yeah,
I feel like now I have to have an expectation that it's going to be almost mind-blowing because of the funds that I'm laying out. But perhaps I should dial that back.
You should dial it back. And, you know, with the creation of Knife, you know, growing up on Long Island, being mostly a seafood chef, a year-trained chef, I found this 40 Farms beef, and I had visited with APL, Adam Perry Lang, the great barbecue guru of the world. And he was doing this, they were inoculating Creekstone 109s and 107s and aging them for 240 days, Reserva at Carne Vino. And I experienced that, and I was like, wow. That, because, you know, I was asked to open a steakhouse, you know, and I'm this fancy pants chef, you know, all this other stuff. And the steakhouse is like selling out at that point, you know, like, you know, I'm not saying, but kind of dial it in. And I want to go back to what you were saying earlier, because I had the opportunity to eat in all of those steakhouses, east, west, and in the middle. And you know what the weakest part of the program was? The steak. And that's what inspired me and gave me the confidence to do Knife, was because, like, you know, they have a great wine list, they have great service, a great location, ambiance, everything's together. And you know what? You get that $70 buy, and it's just okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not bad, you know. Everybody loves a good Allen Brothers prime ribeye. There's nothing wrong with that steak. I love it myself. But when I discovered 44 Farms and the dry aging and what it really could do, because it doesn't eat corn, the feed, all these geek things, it all came together. And my objective, and still to this day, I tell people, the success of Knife is not John Tesar. It's the steak. You know, we're not the most glamorous restaurants. We've now branched out and since with Ritz Carlton, and we've taken the reputation and enhanced the experience. But the original, now 11 years old, is purely based on coming in for a steak and a salad. I mean, that's what a steakhouse is to me. Red wine, steak, salad, macaroni and cheese, good onions, a good vegetable if it's moving you. And if your wife doesn't like steak, we got to give her a decent seafood preparation. That's not a Chilean sea bass or a frozen lobster tail. You know, like chef-driven steakhouse. And one of our greatest accolades is when, you know, Esquire magazine, after Josh passed away, even named Knife one of the most important restaurants of the decade. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a middle-class kid from Manhattan and Queens who was a seafood chef most of his life, moves to Texas and becomes one of the most influential restaurants of the decade and reinvents the steakhouse. I mean, I still haven't wrapped my arms around that. And, you know, I'm not one to get accolades, and most of them I push them away and probably self-destructively criticize them, because I don't think that's what our business should be about. It should be about your satisfaction and your respect for me as a chef, not my dominance as a celebrity, and like maybe I'll talk to you if you're nice enough to me. I don't understand that way. Some celebrity chefs don't talk to people, or work the room, or just understand normal people and think that they're better than other people. That's something I could just never do.
Does it piss you off when people are given the title chef and they haven't done the schooling and they don't have the degree to back it up?
It doesn't piss me off, and as I've gotten older, I've kind of like tried to become judgment free. I just sit back and wait if they really succeed or fail, and that's the story. Like, I tell people restaurants are not 36 months or 48 months. They have to be around for a long time, to pay people back, to make a career. I mean, do you want to tell your wife you have to change your job every 3 years? I mean, that's what a life of a chef is. So the true success is making a restaurant past 5 years, right, in his lives, employing people, training them, and most of all, giving the guests they came for. And I that's really changed my whole perspective. When you play the fame game, when you do the reality TV thing, when you like food critics and writers, and you even hang out with them, to all the food festivals, you get to see everything in our business. And the people respond. What they respond most to? Honesty and good food. So that's what I take away from this is be honest and deliver the best food you possibly can, and you should succeed, because the rest is just kind of like whatever it is. You can call it whatever you want to.
When you look back over the career, John, who are the top two mentors as you're coming up through the New York City scene?
Wow, that's I started in the Hamptons, and Pierre had come from the south of France. He was brought here by the Farkas family, who owned Alexander Farkas and Georgette Farkas for years. Danielle's assistant. She's now running another restaurant for Danielle. So that element of people who aspire to in talent, or the European style of the restaurant early in the 70s, when American food was just being created. I mean, people don't realize there was no Japanese food in 1980 on every corner in Manhattan. It was like Luchow's and Windows on the World and the Rainbow Room and those things. And there were great chefs, all from Europe, from Germany, from Switzerland, even the hotels. And that's when people went for the grandiose experience. They went to the 4 or 5 star hotel. And then the 80s kind of rolled around, and then Jonathan Waxman, Larry Forgione, Paul Prudhomme, all these people created American food, and they started to get opportunities in cities and places. And then we go on to Las Vegas, and then, we have California cuisine and Jeremiah Top. The history of American food, it changed drastically what the American restaurant scene was. And then what I think is the beginning of the end to a certain point is the celebrity. Being a notable chef is one thing, but relying on being a celebrity is a whole other thing. And I think it sends a mixed message to the next generation that you can skip a lot of steps. And if you do TV, that it's more important than learning how to cook. But I have people that work for me now, they don't know how to make Bordelaise sauce, how to make Béarnaise sauce. They don't know how to make Hollandaise sauce. I mean, how you can be a chef, getting back to your question, how you can be a chef and not know the fundamentals is your own, key to doom. Like you want to call yourself chef, you better live up to it, because then all of a sudden the spotlight's on you. And when you can't cook that type of food, you take your lumps,
If you look at TV chefs, Food Network, Cooking Network, blah, 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 who do you respect? Who would you hang with, or who do you hang with?
I respect a lot of them on TV, and I also understand why they're in that, why they're in that genre. They're younger. It's the way the world receives us, kind of speak. And some of them are talented, like Stephanie Izzard, Girl and a Goat. I mean, she does a lot of television, but she's a kick-ass chef, Casey Thompson, who's out of Dallas and Fort Worth. She's done Top Chef 9 times. She's really become an amazing chef, and a lot of my friends, Angelo Sosa, who's opening restaurants in California and Arizona, amazing talent, worked with Ducasse, but was on Top Chef, so I respect a lot of the kids, and I understand why they do it, because it's hard to make a living. And just having one restaurant is not enough money to take care of your family. So when the Food Network comes around and offers you an opportunity for $10,000 an episode to be the judge at Chopped, who's going to turn that down? And then when it finds you interesting, and you can make another $200,000 a year for your family, even though you're giving 50, 60% of it away to agents, managers, and taxes.
Yeah.
It's still, it's a smart move to make for any chef who's not really financially secure or has all that free time to promote their brand. It's just another part of our business. So I don't ever begrudge anybody their success. It's just, for me, I'd rather, cook in the kitchen and give it to you one at a time than let TV be my entryway to my life. But I've done a lot of TV too. So, I don't know how to make sense of that either,
Are you a fan? Like, he's a New York guy, Bobby Flay. We have a Cleveland guy, Michael Simon, of course. I say Cleveland guy, but he lives in the Hamptons. And then like Guy. Are these guys that you like? These guys?
They're all nice guys.
Yeah.
They're all nice guys, but you get swept away by television and money. Bobby Flay, I met Bobby Miracle Grill a long time ago. He's really developed himself not only into a brand, an amazing chef, and a television icon. He's super successful. So I respect Bob for what he's done over the years. But right now he doesn't have a restaurant in New York City. So what does that tell you about the restaurant business? Mm-hmm. That you can't be profitable in New York. So if Bobby Flay can't make it in New York, why would I want to open a restaurant in New York? And Michael Simon too. And he took a hit, Mario World, and TV giving him a suspension for a while, being connected to these guys are great chefs, and I look at Guy as a chef. I look at Guy as an entrepreneur who got really lucky, and begrudged him his success. I don't want to be on Guy's grocery games. I don't want to do 2 episodes to judge. A lot of my friends they got mad at me because I told them I said something a while back at the Tournament of Champions. So I won't repeat what I said. But I just, I'd rather I think it's not my bag. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that I've transcended that. So I've never been the judge. I've always been the contestant. So until they ask me to be a judge, I'm not going to be any more contestants. I just did a show on the Food Network called House of Knives. Right. So it's you have your own. It's your world, and you get your. You have it's like a King of the Hill kind of thing, and it's hosted by Scott Conant. Marco Samuelson is a judge. With some pretty heavy hitters: Jonathan Sawyer, Ann Burrell, Claudette, people like that are really relevant in the TV food scene in the game. But I basically retired after 4 episodes. I don't find it enjoyable running around grabbing stuff out of a pantry and having 30 minutes to cook it. And this was a good show. It was a really quality show. I hope people watch it because it's real cooking. Burrell's a freaking beast. Mm-hmm. I don't even know who won. I can't tell you when I went off or how I went off, but it was interesting to me. It really was my swan song on competitive cooking on television. I just don't enjoy it anymore. I think it's too produced. You
leave New York City, you go to Vegas, you work at RM Seafood. Yeah. You get to Texas in 2006, but I'm curious, what makes Dallas the place for you to go versus Chicago or Los Angeles or somewhere else?
A headhunter calls me up and said, "Would you like the job Dean Ferring used to have?" And I went, literally, I had the phone like this, put the phone up to my ear. I put it over for a second, counted to 10, and I said, "Are you kidding me?" And it came with, at that time, I had never seen those kind of dollars either, you know what I mean? And job security and position, like you're walking after an icon. So there's a lot of eyes on you, and it gave me an opportunity. A lot of people thought I was crazy doing it, but I thought it was the opportunity of a lifetime, and it's kind of worked out well for me. And Dean's really an amazing guy.
When you were getting Knife together, as we've talked about here briefly, you visited the best steak places across the country. So if I could fly or drive you to one place right now that isn't Knife, where are we going and why?
Well, Luger's, I still think it's the king of the steakhouses, just because everything, the history, the service, the Yugoslavian waiters that intimidate you to get a bottle of wine, not let you be cheap. And, the steaks on the money, it's not I don't like butter on my steak. I know how they cut it, cook it rare and then cut it and heat it up, but it's good meat and it's history. And it really, look at that. If it wasn't for Luger's and places like the Myth and Walensky, there would be no Knife. I've always been big on history, and I think that's also what's missing from this younger generation culinary history, and you have to pay respect. You can't be who you are today without knowing who gave you the opportunity to get there in the first place. And I think those were great steakhouses. You know, Stillman, Smith and Walensky, the original one on 3rd Avenue. That place is a palace, man. Like, remember back in the 80s when Wine Spectre, they did $16 million in wine sales. I mean, that's business. That's what we do. You know, like everyone forgets we're here to make money too. You know, not just to go on TV and play games and you got to make money, you know, and I don't care what anybody says. We live in a time right now where Japanese food, Italian food, pizza, Chinese food, and steak, Mexican food, you can't go wrong. Those are the most popular cuisines, and it's time in, time out, year in, year out. And all we're doing is reinventing those things over and over again. And then every once in a while, you know, a genius like John George and Danielle come there, you know, homage to their heritage, and they get opportunities and money behind them to open real, you know, some of the best restaurants in the world and attract some of the best talent, you know.
You mentioned Peter Luger's. And you mentioned that the meat was good, but you mentioned like 4 or 5 other things as well. So if I went to Knife by myself, so back in 2021, I'm going to Dallas to then go on to Denton, Texas, where I'm showing a customer of mine. I work for Peterbilt on the dealer side for trucks. We're going to show him some electric truck, whatever. But the night before, I stop in and I meet up with Daniel Vaughn, one of his buddies, in hopes that I was making it there on time. I had some plane issues, whatever. But we get in there, and as I said, it was a magical experience from literally stepping foot inside, getting that first aroma of, wow, I'm in a steakhouse, the magical lights and torches and all this shit. Would I have the same experience by myself? Or is some of that heightened because I have 2 people that I'm with that I also happen to really like, and I could be having a completely different experience solo?
Be the same thing solo with groups. And you know, you talk about that group you were with. I mean, I've had magical nights at Knife and had the ability to validate myself as a chef through steak. Unlike my French cuisine, you know, I've had some pretty good accolades in my life, but to sit on several nights, I've had Aaron Franklin, Billy Durney, Sam Jones, Daniel, every barbecue guy in the world on their way to Texas Monthly Barbecue, eating at Knife. And everyone, I leave them alone. I sent them every steak I had, and I go back to the table and look at the expressions on their faces. And that's what makes me happy. Yeah. When Aaron Franklin likes your steak, you know, and you live in Texas and you're a New York boy, you go like, I'm doing something right. You know, or like I dry aged foie gras, and I had Michael Ganor, God rest his soul, the owner of Hudson Valley Foie Gras, who recently passed away, and Jeremiah Tower with Stephen Piles in my restaurant. And I gave Michael Ganor from Hudson Valley Foie Gras, I gave him 250-day-old foie gras, dry aged foie gras. And then I gave a slice to Jeremiah Tower, and they both looked at me and said, who the F are you? You know, in a good way. So like moments like that, when you can take the of our business and blow their lids a little bit, I feel good about time to time. You know that, and I care about. That's what floats my boat. Is like giving you the fact that I stumbled upon the greatest steak in the, you know, and you still remember that experience 11 years later, and it's still the same steak, still the same flavor. You can ask Vaughn; he comes by every once in a while for an Ozerski. That's what Knife is. I will not. For me, that's like Melons. I'm not going to move that location. I'm not going to change in it. We're going to put a little face, add some more seafood to it this year after 11 years, and you know, make it similar to at the Ritz Carltons, but not change anything about what we've done. And it really is magical. So, experienced it. Imagine what I experienced the first time as a chef, because I had no idea it would pan out like this. And when I tasted that steak, and then it kept going 90, 120 days, and I literally shared it, and a lot of people, Mike Hiller, David Hale Smith, who's both Aaron and my literary agent, these real hardcore Dallas meatheads, I call them. When I had the seafood restaurant, I was inviting them over to taste all types. We did everything. We did beef belly. We ate the whole, just watching their facial reactions. I didn't care what they said. For me, when someone puts something in their mouth, their face will tell you everything. Yeah. Words are easy. Expressions and real commitment is a totally different thing. You know, and I've been very lucky. It's really changed my life and my career. You know, it really has. And thanks to all those guys for validating it too, you know.
Did you know that Knife was going to have a dry aging program right off the bat, or were you inspired to bring that?
I was given $800,000 to do the whole project by the owners of the hotel. And my first commitment was I must have $100,000 for inventory in the dry aging box. And I have to this day, I give APL, the nod, and Nicole and Mario for opening my eyes to that process even being possible. But then the fact that I brought it back without inoculation and developed this white mold naturally, and 44 Farms was available, and the reason why that mold is white penicillin and develops those flavors that you found that night, the sweetness of the beef rather than that you get at older dry aged steaks, or that rancid flavor that I experience sometimes with a really old dry aged steak at restaurants. Totally different. It blew the lid off my mind. You should ask one day. You should have Vaughn on and bring him back. Rewind before he was the now all powerful Daniel Vaughn, and ask him when he tasted that first 60, 90 day ribeye and sirloin. And I think the thing about 44 Farms is Texas is ribeye, and New York sirloin. This sirloin is the best sirloin I've ever had in my life. It melts in your mouth. It's velvety. It has a moisture to it. There's two things that I really look at a great steak, other than the Maillard and the salt and the pepper on the outside. It's the true flavor of beef, the aroma, and the texture of it. And the moisture is part of that texture. And a lot of great steaks eat. Like next time you eat a good steak, and it'll finish dry. Like I look at there's a beginning, middle, and an end. You have the crust and the salt, and then the juices, and then the fattiness if it's a ribeye, or the thickness of a sirloin because of it's leaner. I put filet in a different category altogether, but the 44 Farms filet actually has flavor too. It's throughout Texas. I think a lot of barbecue guys would use exclusively 44 can't produce the size and the volume. So Creekstone is the go-to brisket in Texas for sure.
In your opinion, what's the most accepted amount of dry aging time by the general public?
I think 60 days is a safe spot for everybody. A ribeye up to 90. I don't really do sirloins because that content past 60. If it's a prime one, we'll go 90. But I've had a 240. I've had a 400 that ate like a regular steak because we backed the mold off of it. That's another thing is you learn that the mold is your delivery system, but the meat is still the meat. So if you protect it and induce so much mold to it, it'll just get juicier and stronger and eat like a great steak. But I like a little bit of the mold. We've tried it every single way possible. And I think 45 to 90 days is a great sweet spot. 20 if you're really a connoisseur, and then after that it's an experience, and it can change with each animal and each steak too. There's a variability based on the animal.
I have always been under the impression that you're throwing these hunks of beef in the dry aging cooler, dry aging box, and it's just whatever's happening in there is just magically happening through science and humidity and air movement. Are you throwing shit into the air to make certain stuff, or introducing anything? Like you're talking about backing off mold and putting on more mold. Like I don't even know what that even means.
Well, that's just placement in the box or removal and stuff like that. And there are times where we've had issues, like after the pandemic, I had to regrow and start again, because I had sold all that beef to survive. I had a tremendous amount. I was opening 3 restaurants and they all were closing states, and I was dry aging the meat in Texas. So it helped me survive. They all surrendered the meat to me. I hired a guy, we cut it, but we sold out and then had to start to buy meat again and reintroduce the mold. So we've sent it out. Justin Brunson, who's a guy who I've given mold to, is using it on different animals, but he sent it out to a lab, and it really is vegetal penicillin. And in my deductive, I've spoken to a lot of experts, professors and organic chemists and stuff like that. And I believe, for years, people thought cows could eat anything because they had 8 stomach linings. But that's not true. They are what they eat. And when you feed it corn, a gross amount of dehydrated corn, just like, it's making bourbon inside the cow. So when you get to past that 60 days, and this was part of the problem that Mario had in Vegas, it was ammoniating. And I learned that. We tried it with different cuts of great steak. I love Creekstone, and we allow customers, but it's really difficult to age it past 90 days. But with the natural feed program from 44 Farms, no antibiotics, no hormones, sorghum, molasses, and fermented cottonseed. And if you think about that, the corn is the fat that really, and an Angus beef, we only serve black beef. And the thing about Angus is it's the only breed that will marble by just eating grass. So if you feed it grass and then you finish it with these fermented, all of this world we live in the culinary world of like fermenting things, making koji. People ask me, like, I don't use anything. We put it in there and it bleeds. And because of the temperature and the humidity and the feed and the chemical makeup, the biological makeup of that beef, we develop by the will of God. I tell you this, Greg, we develop this white mold that kills the black mold and creates this sweet nut other than this rancid. I stumbled upon it by accident. It was divine intervention and initiated by Adam. Adam goes like, yeah, I may have thought of it. You've taken it to a different level. It was like one of the greatest compliments I've received because I think that guy's a genius.
Is dry aged steak in any form at high end steakhouses table stakes at this point?
I find a lot of fake fugazis, as we say back in New York. Fugazis out there, and I don't want to mention their name, but there's a huge provider in New York, and I suspect they add flavoring to their dry aged steaks to enhance that.
Like a supplier, a meat supplier?
A meat supplier, telling you that it's 45 days, but it's kind of like 45 days. It's been there, but it doesn't have any character beyond that. It's just concentrated. And you see all these videos, social media of all these houses with stacks and stacks and stacks of beef. You see a little mold beef. The flavor is the mold. The mold is the flavor. And if it's a corn animal, you're not going to get the same result I get from our animals. And there's a lot of work. I mean, you have to tip your hat to 44 Farms and Bob McLaren for even coming up with this boutique ranching style. And, and he's a very spiritual man too. I believe this is like, like in Texas, we can be really religious. They call it like the Bible Belt, but I'm a spiritual human being. I think God looks down upon the cattle and knife, and 44 Farms, because it is something so different and so special. You've experienced it. I'm not making this shit up, man. It's like, it's changed my life.
So let's talk about steak cooking tips. We've wet everybody's whistle with the best beef in the country. And at home, most folks saddled with cooking devices that aren't, let's say, restaurant quality when it comes to power, especially like the stuff you might be using at Knife and Dale's. Are there pieces of equipment available that you might use at your home or that you would recommend when people ask about getting those great steakhouse experiences at their own backyard?
Oh, for sure. You need to get a steak broiler. And Swank, I've been using the Swank lately. Those guys were nice enough to send me a model.
Yeah.
And it's a great, everyone should have one. If you love steak, for me, there's two ways to cook a steak, either in a cast iron pan or in a steak broiler. And the cast iron pan, I think there's some limitations because for years you couldn't have a steak broiler at home. So at least it got the Maillard and, it developed some of it. But when you're cooking a 32-ounce ribeye that's 2 inches thick on the bone with some fat, you want to render all that rapidly. You want the collagen, you want it to sear and develop the Maillard quickly on the outside. And that broiler does that with a propane tank right in your backyard. It's extremely affordable. Used in Auto Wild before Swank, and they're good, but I have to be honest with you, I prefer the Swank grill. Space and convenience, and even for your backyard, they were a little bit thoughtful that it fits into a bougie backyard setup, and it's great. It's a great device, and you will get steakhouse quality. And what I do to mine is, because I don't like to make a cast iron pan in the bottom of it, and I heat that up first, and then I put my steak into the Swank in the cast iron pan. So it's cooking from the bottom and the top at the same time rather than just the broiler, and then I flip it, and it really helps. And it also captures a lot of that fat and juice, and I can baste the steak. It's a great way to adapt a broiler, which you can't do broiler, but you can do it in this way.
Outside of steak, because obviously it looks like it's a steak cooking beast, there's a number of different level settings that you have. So outside of the steak, what are the best things, or what do you find yourself using it for the most? And then how do you effectively utilize the settings in order to not just rain that 1500 degree infrared burner heat down on something just inches apart?
Oh yeah, there's a little, a notch at the bottom, and you can lift it up and down. So you work it like you would a broiler. And I grew up in that early age of cooking where most restaurants had broilers in them. We cooked everything in a broiler. You just had to learn how to regulate the heat and lift it up and down. So like I cook fish in the thing all the time. It's great. Anything, I melt cheese. It's a great cheese melter. You can turn the flame down a little bit and cook things slowly, cook things fast. I know they have pizza stones in it, but I have a pizza yard. I don't need to cook pizza oven in my steak broiler. You can though. So if you want an all-in-one device, they have all of that there for you, and it works fantastically. I like to be specific. So for me, I use it as a straight up broiler. I use it to melt things, to render things, keep things warm too sometimes.
You're a seafood chef of some notoriety. If I wanted to do lobster tails in my Schwank grill, give me a quick rundown from prep to eat.
Oh, easy. I just take a lobster, right? You can blanch it for a second in some water, right? Because with lobster, I always like to purge it in some hot water because it makes the meat move away from the shell. To cook the lobster whatsoever, it's just going to it gives the lobster meat some texture and resilience and pulls it away from the shell because it's fresh. To eat lobster while they're alive, and I don't really think you should use a frozen lobster tail, but you can apply recipe to a frozen lobster tail once you thaw it out. But for me, I like to take about 1.5 pounds lobster, purge it in boiling it, take it out, chill it, cut it in half, and I slather it with garlic butter, and I stick it in the Swank broiler until all of that butter melts and caramelizes over the top. And at the last minute, I just take a little bit of Italian breadcrumb that I've put some garlic and Parmesan cheese and parsley and lemon zest, and I ton that. And that's, you got a lobster dish, and all you have to do is buy the lobster and, boil the water, the rest, and make some garlic butter. You're all set. It's a great dish. I literally serve that dish at Knife Italian and at Knife right now. We do like a lobster, even in Knife and Spoon. Some version of a broiled lobster. I just think it belongs in a steakhouse, and I can't eat those Australian frozen lobster tails or those South African things. I just don't, buy American, buy Canadian and American. Buy a live animal. Crustacean, rather.
Are you a fan of reverse sear or sous vide?
Oh, for the home cook, yeah. I think we overuse sous vide because it creates one consistent texture. And I think if you have a good steak, you don't need to sous vide. Sous vide is to take like a bavette or a culotte that might be a little tougher or a little bit more difficult to cook because it's so big. And if you sous vide it, at 125, 130 for like an hour, 90 minutes, sear it, you're going to have a perfectly medium rare steak where normally you can have this meat that's burnt on the outside, a lot of be maybe medium rare on the inside. That's what I like to use for sous vide. And with a good expensive steak, when you need any of these devices, or you live in a park city or somewhere where you smoke out the joint, reverse sear is the way to go. You put it in there very low, slow and low, and you get the internal temperature to where you want it. And then you just take that cast iron pan, 2 minutes on each side. Everyone's got a little bit of a fan in their house. So you're not blowing it out in a cast iron pan for 10 minutes. And, your wife's like, well, what the hell house, or let alone you're a chef and you go to somebody else's house to do it. And you're like, who the hell are you, buddy? Oh, trust me, you're going to enjoy this. after you get through the smoke, smoke, you're going to love this. So that's where reverse sear really works. There's some compromise to the flavor by the way it breaks down the fat. That's the only thing I've found with reverse sear. It doesn't, you lose a little bit of the overall texture. It's very minimal. It's extremely minimal. I'm really piercing, I'm making a big deal out of not a lot there.
What does earning a Michelin star mean to you personally and then professionally?
I think people misunderstand it. It truly is a team sport, and it means a lot. It means a lot. But then I'm also confused, why, or certain things like that. And no, don't get me wrong. I'm very appreciative, and it means a lot professionally, but I'm kind of over all of that stuff personally because I've been on a journey on my own. Like when I was a young chef, I wanted to be a celebrity. I wanted to be known. I wanted to be discovered. I wanted to be successful. And now that I'm somewhat all of those things, I really care more about my family, friends, and my patrons. It's less about me and more about other people. Because once you have like your own success, you should chill out a little bit, like make some room for other, pass it on, pay it forward. And I think that, those accolades, just people aspire to be like you, and it either goes two ways. Either they're jealous and they hate you, or they like you and want to be like you. So it's a 50-50 shot these days.
So let's talk about these accolades just for a second, specifically the Star and the James Beard Awards. If you had to give one up, which one do you pick and why?
Oh, I keep Michelin and give James Beard away.
Yeah?
I just think they've drifted. I think they've drifted. Plus Michelin is every year. James Beard is like once, maybe twice if you're lucky. And that's like, I think it's lost credibility just due to inclusion. And I don't want to offend anybody, but, like it becomes more of like a life story rather than a life's journey. And when I was coming up, like, I would look at like Jeremiah Tower and Bradley Ogden and Danielle, all these famous chefs that won these, and even Tom Colecchio and guys like, it was different back then because it was really like you had a great restaurant, you got 3 stars that year, you were getting approval from your peers, and then you got the award. Now, that's, I don't begrudge any chef who gets nominated or wins an award because they work their ass off for it. Like I love when you see Chris Bianco getting a Lifetime Achievement Award from the James Beard Foundation. There's nothing, and I know Isabel, we talk about this all the time, Isabel Wojcik, who runs the foundation, kind of does the field work for them. And I don't have a beef. I told her just last week I want to do a fundraiser for James Beard. But the awards to me have become hideous. And not the chefs, the process. I think the process is flawed, and I think a lot of other people in the industry feel the same way I do, except some of them want an award. And, I've been nominated 5 or 6 times, never won the big deal. And I'm not bitter. I mean, it's an honor to have accomplished that. But then you also realize the politics and the bullshit of it too at times, and that goes for everything. Michelin is anonymous. It truly is. You sit on your hands and knees and wait for the invite every year. And when you don't get it, and sometimes they forget to send messages out. You get sick to your stomach. Like the first year I got it, it was the year after the pandemic. And, you do a little research. You ask guys who got it the year before what happens. And they say, well, they give you a phone call at 2:00 in the afternoon the day of to make sure you're coming. So we're waiting. I'm in Florida and Orlando with like 10 other chefs, that are invited to the thing. And we're like, did anybody get a phone call? And like, nobody got a phone call. And I'm sitting up in the club lounge, like pounding margaritas going like, where the fuck is my phone call? And then my publicist calls me and goes, listen, I just called Wolfgang Puck's PR person, Stephanie. And she says, they don't give you phone calls. That was during pandemic. Oh. So I ran down to the bar. It was 5 minutes before the award ceremony was starting. All the chefs were afraid to go to the award ceremony because they didn't get the phone call. They didn't want to be. And I said, hey, by the way, let's go over to the tent because there is no phone call. And you should have seen everybody's face was like, oh my God, we went there and like, 90% of us got a star that day. So wow. But I don't think it defines you. And it truly is about your restaurant and your team. That's what I tell people, like you're the star, you're a Michelin starred chef of a Michelin starred restaurant. Mm-hmm. It's not all you. It's the sommelier, it's the designer, it's everything. Even though I say it's about the food, it's not. It's about everything. And they cater to elegance, and they cater to a high-end clientele. And that's what you want to. You want to have those people that really appreciate and travel the world know that you're notable. They named us one of the best 11 steakhouses in the world, and I was like, is that including Asia? Because there's some pretty sick steakhouses in Asia. Like you think America's bougie, you go over to Shanghai and like all these places. Those restaurants are freaking amazing. I would love to open a knife in Tokyo. I think Japanese people would go crazy over 44 Farms beef. So that's one dream I have. I'm opening up in Austin in the next 24 months. So that was a dream of mine. And now I think after that, we're going to hopefully expand beyond that. But, only if we can do it the right way. I don't need 30 restaurants. Don't get me wrong. It's not about that. It's about the right restaurant in the right place.
On April 16th, 2024, as we're recording this, people will hear this in mid-June, percent chance that you are going to open a restaurant in Tokyo or Shanghai?
At this point, I think it's 40-60. The conversation has crossed my table, but I know how long these things take, and I also know how the world changes day to day. Like I was asked to do a promotion for Ritz-Carlton Yachts to put a 60-seat steakhouse on the new yacht. But I was up against Jose Andres. So I was like, okay, we're going to do the presentation, but I know who's going to get the deal, you know? So there's that too, you know, like if someone might want to put a knife in Tokyo, but if they want Jose Andres or Danielle or John George, they're going to win out over John Tesar, but not the steak. They may be more famous, more influential chefs than I am, but their steak's not better than mine.
Would that be a big time commitment for you to be over there then, to make sure that that's all being done right? Or would it just be, you know, get over there every so often to double check?
It's to get over there every so often. Like even with the Ritz-Carltons, we set it up and then they run it.
Yeah.
So they, you know, it is a licensing deal in the sense where I have control of the menu and the brand, but they have to execute. And it's a great partnership because at an elegance, you know, at that brand of elegance and luxury, they should elevate the experience rather than dumb it down. So that's why these partnerships are really amazing for me. And these people work at it. You know, they have to. It's their job. They have more, the onus, you know, like to get the star back in Florida is more on them than it is on me to a certain extent, you know.
How much does the food world not realize how much they miss a guy like Josh Ozerski?
Oh, man. It's a shame. I mean, he was really, I think Bourdain and him were two of the best writers about food I've ever experienced in my whole life. And Josh, I love Josh because Josh was this wild, reckless human being that just told the truth about food and really loved it. And he loved meat and he loved chefs and he understood what it was all about. So to lose Josh was he died the evening of the James Beard Awards in Chicago the year Aaron Franklin won the James Beard Award for Best Chef Southwest. So it was a great Texas. It was a great moment for barbecue. And then like the saddest moment we've all experienced all at the same time, you know? And I was always of the belief, you know, like Billy Durney still hates me because of it. I thought the Pitmasters deserved their own category at the James Beard Awards. And they thought I was slighting them. And it wasn't. I think, you know, like you can't compare a French chef to a pitmaster, and pitmasters should have their own category. They're geniuses amongst themselves, and it's a genre that doesn't compete with anything else. So I think giving them their own category and their own accolade was something that James Beard has overlooked for a long, long time. But I was glad Aaron won that. He deserved it. You know, I mean, he's always been the foundation and the icon of, you know, modern Texas barbecue after Mrs. Snow, you know, and Lockhart's and those guys. And Muller's, you know, the famous names of Texas.
A common misconception about Anthony Bourdain was what?
I get in trouble for all this all the time, but he wasn't the greatest cook ever. But he was the greatest storyteller.
Did he maintain that he was a really good cook?
I don't think he ever did, but I think people just assume that given his fortune and fame. You know, it's such a mixed bag for me because, you know, I always tell people it's easier to befriend people before they become famous. You know, and Tony and I were friends before anybody even knew any of our names, you know, and then we went on this wild journey together. And then when he married Octavia, she kind of pushed him away from a lot of his old friends and got him more into being a true celebrity and, you know, being this icon that it was. And to take his own life for an embarrassing situation with during the Me Too movement and a woman just boggles my mind because he would have survived even if he lost the CNN show or if they forced him out because of cancel culture, because he wrote a check for, you know, Asia Argento was one of the major accusers of Harvey Weinstein. Harvey, and then Tony, wherever he went, he went on the I hate Harvey Weinstein train, like in seminars, in New York Times, everywhere. And then she had an illicit affair with a 17-year-old Italian boy. He wrote a check, a hush money check, and that was all about to come out right smack during the middle of the Me Too movement. And I just think that because of traveling, depression, alcohol consumption, fame, and that fear, that he just had an error in judgment and took his own life, sadly.
Perfect storm.
I mean, perfect storm of depression and sadness all at the same time. And a tremendous loss. Just for his daughter. You know, I look at when people have tragedy, I don't look so much as to the external, I look at the internal, like, you know, like what you're leaving behind, not what you were, you know, preventing from happening. Like, your fans are one thing, but your is another thing. Like leaving your 10-year-old daughter behind is like kind of, I don't know. I don't understand that under any circumstances, but Tony always did a lot of things contrary to popular belief.
Obviously, Knife Italian is the newest restaurant that's open. As I mentioned, people are hearing this now early to mid-June. Anything in that time frame that you want to promote that you know about that we can be on the lookout for?
Well, if you come out to Las Colinas, I think it's a really beautiful restaurant in a brand new Ritz-Carlton. It was formerly the Four Seasons, where they had the Byron Nelson Golf Tournament. A lot of people in Texas and around the country know where the hotel is. It was most recently we had U.S. soccer team there, the selections for the soccer. So you get a lot of Jerry World, a lot of Toyota Music Factory, a lot of entertainers and groups that come into that hotel because it's not downtown Dallas. But it's a different world. It's 15 miles, and it's really designed to keep people on property, not getting them to go to Dallas or Addison and those places. And I've always wanted to, being Irish and Italian, I mean, I've had three names in my life. One is, my real name is Thomas Kenyon, and then my adoptive name, John Tesar, and then Bourdain named me Jimmy Sears. So I've had three names in my lifetime. But originally, I'm Irish and Italian from New York City, so and adopted by a Czech family. So I've always had that, I tell people that my vernacular is Irish and my cuisine is Italian. My way of addressing things is very Irish in your face, and the way I cook is very straightforward.
Some websites, johntesar.com. You have knifedallas.com, and of course on Instagram, Chef John Tesar. John, this has been an absolute treat for me. As I said, it was a great introduction, just going with Daniel to the restaurant, and then eating, and then finally being able to get you down here 3-4 years after the fact has been a great honor for me. Appreciate all the time here tonight and continued success.
No, thank you for having me, and I'm sorry it was so difficult to get it on. And you are as good as interviewing as Howard Stern. You are. I love that. I love that you put yourself in that genre, because I'm a lifelong Howard fan. And when Ralph died, I was sad. Like all these things, I've lived Howard. Like the greatest moments were when I would sit in my car at 6:00 in the morning and wait for Sam Kinison to show up at Howard's studio after he had been at the Comedy Store, like wrecked all night.
No sleep, just rolling in.
Ever. No sleep, just rolling right into the studio.
Yeah.
But thank you, Greg. It's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
You heard him. It was an honor. Honor for me, actually. Hopefully you enjoyed the John Tesar interview. Before we close out this first hour, I want to talk to you about Schwank Grills. That's right, gang. Check out the grill that everybody on the internet is talking about. You're seeing it all over different podcasts as well, on social media feeds. It's the Schwank Grill. What do we need to know? The unit heats up to 1,500 degrees using infrared burner technology. More on that in a second. What does that mean to you? Now you can grill the juiciest steaks you have ever had in as little as 3 minutes. No more wasting your life cooking on the proteins. Schwank Grills does it all with great results and does it quickly. The infrared burner technology, the same technology used at the world's best steakhouses, including Morton's, Del Frisco's, Cut 432, just to name a few. And this isn't, they also use infrared burner of some sort. They're using the Schwank burner technology. Remember, 1,500 degrees, you can build that delicious crust on both sides of the steak without overcooking it. The steak is incredibly juicy and flavorful. There's truly no other grill like it on the market right now. Some call this the future of grilling, believe it or not. The drip tray benefits. Are you kidding? Melt a stick of butter as those steaks are cooking. Maybe it's browned a little bit, extra nuttiness, extra flavor, and then once those steaks are done, pull those steaks down, rest them in the butter bath. You can throw some herbs, spices in there as well if you want. Almost like a board sauce. Dare I say better than a board sauce? You can take it all out, put it on a board after you're done cooking the whole thing and it's rested in the butter and the drip tray. Throw it on a board if you want. Let your mind go crazy. Not just a steak cooker, a supreme steak cooker, to be sure. But you can do chicken wings, different chicken parts, delicate fish, lobster tails, all within minutes of going. And don't worry, like I tell you each and every week, 1,500 degrees sounds like a lot. You heard Brianna Stark talk about it a couple weeks ago. There are 7-8 different levels of distance away from the infrared burners. So if you don't need the full intensity of those infrared burns, you can drop it all the way down to the lowest setting. You mess around with it. It's like any other cooker. Learn the sweet spots and the proteins that you're looking to cook. And a great creme brulee topper as well. Multi-talented and versatile. And it's portable. You can save $150 off the cooker right now if you go to schwenkgrills.com. You can click in the podcast notes, you can click in the newsletter, you can go to the show homepage, click on the Schwenk logo, and then as you're checking out and you have a natural gas and propane gas option if you want, use code BBQ Central, all one word, BBQ Central at schwenkgrills.com, and it'll save you $150 off any grill. Free money, just easy like that. From your friends here at the Barbecue Central Show. There's more to come. Stick around. We'll be right back.